Peter Remington is a business coach with a passion for paying it forward. But it was a friend with breast cancer who gave him the title Chief Possibility Officer. Years later, he still holds that title. Today, we'll talk about percolating versus circulating through life, the importance of intuition, and he shares how he supported his sister through her breast cancer journey, and so much more. Help us share the mission of the Rose by subscribing to Let's Talk About Your Breast on your favorite podcast platform, and by sharing with your family and friends. Let's Talk About Your Breast, a different kind of podcast presented to you by The Rose, a breast center of excellence and a Texas treasure. You're going to hear frank discussions about tough topics, and you're going to learn why knowing about your breast could save your life. Thank you so much, Peter, for being with us today. We're just delighted to have you here, and I can't wait to hear more about this philosophy you have of life. But first, I want you to tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, how far back?
Well, I love the story of, you were very, very successful and how you just had such a great business, but one day it dawned on you that's not what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And I teach that in the classes that I do and so forth. Myself included, everybody circulates through life, don't they? They just kind of circulate, getting promotions and raises and so forth and so on. Or, if you start off in high school, just all the different things you do, going to college, getting married, you just circulate through life. But every once in a while, as I was circulating through my life, I'd percolate. And when I would percolate, I look above me and I saw a bigger, brighter future for Peter Remington. And I believe everybody sees that in their life. They percolate. But what happened to me, and this process took 30 years. I mean, I felt like I was walking through the desert for 40. But as I would percolate, I get up there and I see a better, more abundant life for Peter Remington. But then all of a sudden, I'd get a promotion or a raise, and boom, I'm right back into circulating through life. And it wasn't until about 15, 16 years ago that I percolated and I stayed there. And that's what happens, because I decided to make that choice. I decided that this is where I'm supposed to be and not down here circulating with the masses.
Well, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And everybody has that opportunity.
You believe that?
I know that. I know that. Everybody receives messages from whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it from God or from the universe or whatever your higher power is, you get a message and you have to pay attention to it. That's the thing. Because you have, they say when people pray, they're talking to God. Well, intuition is when God talks back. And intuition comes to you very, very quietly. It's that little feather touching your ear. And that's God talking to you, or your higher power talking to you. And I use God as an acronym. God is your grand overall designer, G-O-D, grand overall designer of your life. So when you hear that little intuition coming to you, pay attention to it, because that's the message that you need to heed. Because when you have God doing that and you have your adversary, whatever your adversary may be, over here pounding away on the drums and the pots and the kettles and making everything noisy and distracting to you, that's going to keep you circulating through your life. But this little feather on your ear, this little still silent voice in your heart is what's going to get you to percolate and stay up there. Everybody has that.
So how do we really pay attention to it?
Be aware. And you think about this, back in the days of Emerson and people like that, their whole life was built about farming, wasn't it? And they had a couple of things to do. They had to farm their land, disc their land, till it cleared of stones and so forth. And then they would read spiritual, they read out of the Bible, they'd do spiritual pray and do all that was their whole thought process. They weren't worried about TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or 500 TV stations or, what am I going to look like today? All those different distractions that children, young adults have in their lives today. They didn't have that problem. So they spent a lot of time thinking. And so while they were thinking, and call it meditating or prayer or whatever you may call it, while they're doing all that, they are getting messages. They're receiving messages because they're silent. They take time to do that, and they're aware of their surroundings. So what we, in today's world, is to take some time out and sit in a silent room, be quiet with ourselves, meditate for a bit, and listen to what's being sent your way.
That's great. That's great. Now, I happen to have a little ranch, and I'm going to tell you that's hard work. But what you just said about being out, being in nature,
Yes.
it's an entirely different world, and it's one that we forget about in the city.
Right.
We don't often take that time for it, but it's considered to be a total healing experience for many people. So, yeah.
I mean, going around Memorial Park now with what they've done with the park, with the bridges over the road and so forth, and get back in the woods, and you could just be alone. But even down by Lake City and Kemah, there's some great walking paths down there where people can go into nature and be by themselves. And it's just great to sit there and be silent and listen and look at the wonder of what's out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's just amazing.
It's kind of that open your eyes.
Yes.
Be aware.
Yeah, be aware and just be silent with yourself. I meditate in my office at home, and I will sit there and I'll concentrate on a spot or a photo or whatever, and I just look at it and just calm myself down, and then I just be aware.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what do you think the difference is between self-care and well-being?
Oh, boy.
Hey, you're describing some of those things that get us there.
Excuse me. Self-care is just taking care of yourself, right? Which is what you put in your mouth and how you work out and taking care of just your physicality and so forth. But well-being, to me, is being centered, working from the inside out. By working from the inside out, you're able to project who you are. And if your well-being is being balanced, it's being spiritual, it's being able to pray, it's being able to see the good that's out there, and it's much more of a calming factor than self-care is. Mm-hmm. So,
great way to describe it. Not everybody feels good about themselves.
No.
So how do we get to that place of feeling good about ourselves?
Well, I didn't feel good about myself for the longest time. I'm a son of a 22-year Marine Corps veteran. He fought in World War II and in the Korea War. He was a fighter pilot, and he got there when he was 21, and that generation being thrown into what they were thrown into at such a young age, and his whole thing when he came back, started raising children. He raised us like Marines. I mean, if something happened to us, well, that was just too darn bad about you, right? If you had a cut or whatever, he'd pinch it to make it bleed more. I always said that my father made the great Santini look like Bozo the Clown.
Oh my gosh.
So there were parts in my life growing up that I always felt that I was never good enough. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't feel good about myself. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't smart enough. I was all these different things. But then I realized, as you get older and you get smarter and I get more into myself, into my well-being, that, wasn't my dad's fault or my mom's fault or anything like that. I mean, that's what they knew. That's how they were raised. Mm-hmm. It's my turn now to fix myself and become better. So I go through this process, or I went through this process, and I'm a seeker, by the way. I have done so many different things. I've been on shaman journeys. I've, wake up in the morning and climb a mountain at 5 o'clock in the morning, watch the sunrise when I was living in California and San Francisco. And, I just tried all these different ways to go inside myself. And so what I discovered is you need to learn how to become an Erasaholic. And what I mean by that, I wrote a book called Be a Holic, a 14-step process to becoming a successaholic, and that's a shameless plug for me, but I'm going to take it. And so with that, the first step about being a an aholic is an erasaholic, erasing your limiting beliefs, erasing your low self-confidence, erasing any sort of things you have that were put into your system at the age of 6 through whatever, right? Or even when you were 3 to whatever. So by being a erasaholic, and let's just say you have a notion that you'll never amount to anything. And that was brought into you by, these things are given to you by some pretty credible people, whether it be your parents or your church or your teachers or your siblings or your grandparents, whatever. They kind of program you their way, but not your way. All right? It wasn't the life you were supposed to live. It was the life they were telling you to live and how to live it and how to be a certain way. So you have to ask yourself, if they say to you, you're never going to amount to anything, you have to ask yourself, is that true, false, or I don't know? Now you think about that. Is it true that you're never going to amount to anything? No. Is it false? Yeah. Is it I don't know? Possibly. Because you are going to amount to something. So when that person gave you that imprint on your soul or whatever you want to call it, you can go and meditate and go see that person and say, hey, that was you projecting on me. Okay, that was your limiting belief, not my limiting belief. And you gave it to me when I was 4 years old or 5 years old. So therefore, I'm going to erase that from my system. I'm not going to buy into that. I'm not going to own it. I'm going to give it back to you. And I'm going to go out and rewrite my script on how I'm going to live my life and become a bigger, better person. So I totally believe that, to fix yourself, you need to go back and visit with those people, not physically because they may no longer be with you, but go back and in meditation or in thought or whatever, go back and give it away. Just give it back to them. Don't take ownership of it, and then rewrite your own script to become the person you're supposed to be.
Wow. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's
a great way of doing it.
It is.
Yeah.
You talk to everybody. There's a fabulous book, and I cannot remember the author's name right now, but I read it back in 1988 or 89, called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And it's all about people who have been programmed or have had their feelings hurt or whatever. And so they have little buttons all over their chest. And some people have a great big button all over their chest that people have the habit of pushing, and it causes that person to have a bad day or a bad week. And some people a bad month, some other people a bad year. But those feelings, if you don't address them, if you don't address those negative feelings, they will never die. And you will hold on to those feelings and live with those feelings throughout your life, which is not what you want to do. You want to get those feelings and give them back to the person that gave them to you. So you don't have to live with them. Get rid of them.
So that's not a one-time process. You may have to do it many times,
Many.
right?
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. No, it's not a one-time process. But the buttons really never, ever go away. You just minimize them to the point where they're only like the top of a pin versus the size of a disc.
Good example, yes.
Okay.
That's a real good image.
And then you also get a chance to become aware when those buttons are being pushed. Even though they are the size of a pin, they could still get pushed. But you're so much better, you're so much stronger about yourself that you go ahead and you don't accept what's being said to you.
Okay, now you're going to have to make a real leap here. How did the book move into this prepare for more process that you've created?
Well, that book is Prepare for More. And it was all, and really what it was the preparing I did getting to that book. So, my first self-help class was a Dale Carnegie course when I was like 24 years old.
Absolutely.
And, how to win friends and influence enemies or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And when I was done with that course, I didn't recognize myself. I was saying things and talking and speaking and being more outrageous than I've ever been before, in my first 24 years of living. Mm-hmm. But that was the start of it. And the person who turned me on to the book of Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, when I read that, I said, wow, that's huge. And then I just started reading a bunch of metaphysical books and self-help books and psychology books and so forth. And then Tony Robbins came out, and then Stephen Covey came out, and reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and James Allen and Genevieve Behrend. There's all these individuals. When you read those books, Emerson, whatever you want to read, and you say, this is tremendous. This is tremendous. And I just started building myself up to the point where I finally read or wrote that book. Actually, I need to rewind on that a little bit. I always go to seminars, and I was in a seminar where we were doing a guided meditation. In other words, you would sit there and someone would tell you what you're supposed to be meditating on. And so I'm lying down and meditating with a person and started telling the story, which is you're supposed to hop in a boat, go off to an island, climb up the mountain of the island, and go into a temple. And in the temple, you go up there, there's all your friends and the people you love and some of the people you've hurt. You make your amends and so forth. And you go back to the room and you empty out all the things that you're carrying in your backpack. And that could be just weighted down issues you may have, but you get rid of those things. And then you point out the people that you want to continue your life's journey with, and you go back down the mountain, you hop on your boat and sail away and have a happy life. Mine was nothing like that. Nothing. When I started my meditation, I was at the Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. I'm there, there's a black oily water there in San Francisco. The seals are there, they're barking away, and it smells like fish. And there's this huge sailboat with a dinghy attached, and I hopped in a dinghy, and I'm sailing across San Francisco Bay. It's a gray, cold San Francisco day, sailing up past Alcatraz and on my way to Marin County. And as soon as I hit Marin County, which is where Mount Tamalpais is, I hit the shore, and all of a sudden everything goes into Technicolor. It's beautiful, it's colorful. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, right? Boom. And I started climbing out Mount Tam. And on my way there, up the path, there's this huge boulder in my way, and it's either you have to go over it, under it, around it. Well, I just took my hand and I pushed that boulder out of my way, and I continued my journey up to where the temple was. I get to the temple, I open the door, and there's all the friends of mine, the people I love, and some people I've hurt, and I make my apologies and amends. And I go back to the altar in the back of the room, and there's an angel waiting for me. And so I took off my backpack and put everything down on the table. And then the angel said, I want you to turn around and walk through those doors. I turned around, I opened the doors, and it was flooded with light. I was just flooded with light. And I walked through the light, and all of a sudden, this little hand grabbed my hand. And I looked down, it was me at the age of 5. And I looked down at me, and I said, are you okay? And 5-year-old me said to me, yeah, are you okay? I said, yeah. I said, well, let's do this thing. So he turned around. I get to the front of the room. I say goodbye to everybody. I didn't take any. This is the funny part. I float down the mountain like a bad Japanese movie, right? Float down, get back in my dinghy, and I sailed back to San Francisco, back to the gray. That night I went to bed and woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is a critical time because 3 o'clock is when the Holy Spirit is out and around talking to you. I woke up and I realized at that point that my purpose in life was to achieve my highest human potential that I possibly can, and that to teach others that the screenplay they were given is not the screenplay they have to live out, that they can rewrite their own screenplay and live the life they were meant to live. And my purpose in life is to vibrate at the highest level allowed by God, and to take all the gray out of people and turn them into colorful people.
Oh, I love that, Peter. That is really
at that point,
great.
I started writing the book.
Oh, right then.
Right then and then. I had great big posters in my room where I was, and I had my desk, and I just started writing the outline to it, and next thing you know, 6 months later, I was published, and then I became a best-selling author on Amazon.
Wow. Wow. Just talking about these things.
Yes. Just talking about being an erasaholic, a purposeaholic, a goalaholic, a believeaholic, all the different things, actionaholic, all the different things.
Okay. What I'm hearing from you is that the words we use are very important.
Yes.
So tell us, and tell us about your process of having the intention cards that you use every day.
Okay. So, we all sit down, and I'm guilty of it I was running offices and so forth, and I put together my to-do list for the day, the 1 through 10. We're all critical to do the to-do list. And through the courses I've taken, I've worked with Les Brown, Mary Morrissey, John Maxwell, Bob Proctor, Paul Martinelli, a bunch of different individuals. So I've had a lot of coaching, and coaching is not a bad thing. Coaching is good for everybody because they help bring you about. Some of the things that I couldn't do on my own, they brought it out of me. And that's critical. So if anybody is watching and listening this, if you need a coach, get a coach. Have somebody help you through your journey and help you through the process. So I had my goals set for my business, but I didn't have my goals set for Peter Remington. And so these intentions cards came out through one of my mentors, and we would set you'd set your intentions for the day. There's 4 things that I would do, and I still do. And now it's 5 things, but the 4 things in the beginning were, what are my intentions for the day? What am I planning on doing for Peter today? For me, my intention could be as simple as buying a cup of coffee for a stranger, or telling the cashier at the grocery store how great she looks, what a great job she's doing. Just making people feel good, right? So that might be my intention for the day. The second thing I do is I write down, what am I grateful for? Let's remember what we're grateful for. And so I'm grateful for my house, for my health, for my car, for my dog, for my wife, for the life I've lived, for the challenges I'm given. I'm grateful for my challenges. And then I write down what I call my great I ams, images about me, I ams. And those are, how am I going to portray myself to the people today? Am I going to be positive and loving and forgiving and energetic and ready and prepared? That's my great I ams and how I'm going to project myself. The 4th thing I do is I write down, what am I going to create today? If I'm going to create a new friend, am I going to create a new account? What am I going to create for the day? And that's what I write down. And now the 5th thing that I do is what did I do today? So I kind of have a journal going along with this whole thing as well. So I can see what I did and how did it affect. I may not have done what my intentions were. I might not have created what I wanted to create, but I did do something. So I want to make sure I log that into my...
Celebrate.
Yeah, celebrate those wins.
Celebrate those wins, absolutely.
Yeah.
Peter, you've become quite a philosopher. And I know one of the titles you have, you'll have to tell me how you got this, but was Chief Possibility Officer.
Yes.
Yeah. And so did you give yourself that name, or how'd you get that?
So when I first started working with my mentors, there was a beautiful woman. Her name was Joyce, and she happened to pass of breast cancer, by the way. And her title was Chief Possibility Officer at the mentor program that I was in. And we were talking, and I was just telling all these things, and she said, I want to give you this title. So it was given to me. And I just loved it, and that title was given to me back in 2009, and I've held on to that title. I think it means everything because, there's the baby boom generation, there's the next generation, there's Generation X, there's the generation what next, but we're, I believe that we're all part of one generation, which is the possibility generation. Whether you're 18 or 80, anything is possible at any given moment. You just have to act on it.
And believe it.
Yes.
And look for it.
Yes. And have faith in it. Faith is a big thing in life. If you don't have faith in, faith is used 21 times in the book, Hebrews book in the Bible. They use faith. Faith that they would part the sea. Faith that Mary would give birth to Jesus. Faith that certain things would happen. So faith is a big thing. So you have to believe it. You have to have faith. And you have to be able to act upon that faith and keep on moving forward, even if there's no evidence that things are happening. Just because there's, lack of evidence doesn't mean there's evidence of lack. It's going to happen. Lack of evidence doesn't mean evidence of lack. For the worst analogy in the whole wide world, because everybody uses it, which is the oak turning into an oak tree, but a blade of grass will start to sprout within a week, so there's some evidence, right? But you plant an acorn, and you're staring at the ground for a very, very long time. You could just walk away from it and say, that's not going to grow into a tree. That's lack of evidence, but it's not evidence of lack, because that thing is growing underneath the ground, and it'll eventually grow into an oak tree.
Great example. All right, Peter, now bring us to breast cancer has been something that you've experienced in not just your friend's life, personal life.
My sister had it, yeah.
And were you coaching her during that time?
It's a sibling, right? I was just loving her, okay? I don't know. And maybe through my words of love, my feelings of love towards her, might have been some coaching going on, right? But it's different than talking to friends that are going through that difficulty, and how I talk to them, and what I talk to them about keeping their spirits up, and having faith again, that they're going to be well.
But you're touching on something very important. Sometimes it's more difficult with family.
Yeah, because you're siblings.
You're siblings, and you tell them you love them, and you try to show it, but you can't take it away from them, whatever it is.
No.
And it's sometimes very hard. The number one question that I hear from people is, I don't know what to say to someone once they've been diagnosed. I don't know how to help them. I've asked them, what can I do? Which we all know, when you're going through an experience, don't ask. Just do something.
Just do. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, just do it.
Can I do this for you? Or
sack of groceries, or come in and take care of the kids for a day, or whatever.
Clean the house.
Right.
Just
There's
do whatever.
so many little things we can do, because everyone's going through something.
Yeah.
But when it's something like breast cancer, it's very visible. It's very strain. Your body is under such strain, and all the time, the most important thing is to focus on healing.
Yeah.
And at the Rose, so many of our women are in financial straits that all they can think about is, how many bills am I going to have?
Right.
And that's one of our real challenges. And I think everybody worries about that. So sometimes we just have to go on faith, like you're talking about.
Well, and when you sit there and you have to worry about bills, and you think about those things that, they're out there for sure, but worrying about those bills is not helping your situation. It's have faith that those bills will get paid. Have faith that you have this magnificent machine called your body, and have faith in prayer. Your body has the ability to repair itself in a lot of different ways, and prayer has the ability to repair yourself in a lot of different ways, even though you're fighting this terrible thing called cancer. But have faith that this is going to happen. Your bills are going to get paid. Your kids are going to get fed. Things are going to happen for you. Because if you keep yourself in a state of faith and believing, and things are going to be positive, it will cure.
People will show up.
People will show up.
You'll have that nudge to go do something else.
Yeah.
I've seen it over and over again.
Yeah. People can think their way into sickness.
And that's so true.
Right.
And sometimes once we get into the physical state, we need a physical happening to get us out of it. So, that is so much about life. Gosh, I have 1,000 questions. We may have to get you back on this show to just go through them, but you also have a nonprofit, right?
I have a nonprofit called Charities. It's a 501c3 that I support 4 different children's charities on, one being Kids Meals, who a great organization that feeds roughly 2,700 preschool children every single day, and it's Meals on Wheels for preschool children, because kids between the ages of 0 to 6, that's when they're forming their mind. That's when all these great things are happening. So if they go hungry and they have this whole thing and they have a whole new relationship with food that's negative, and then it creates, obesity and just terrible things, and their mind doesn't develop the way it should. So that's one great organization. Another one is Deck My Room, which decorates hospital rooms for children that have long-term stays in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So instead of looking at those drabby green or gray walls, they put big old fat heads of Barbie or Spider-Man or a text player and change out their bedspread so it's a little bit more enticing than that blue blanket they throw over you. That's a cool one.
Yeah. So that's another way that you serve.
Well,
another way that you enjoy or you show your love.
Yeah, and I sit on the board of Kids Meals now, and I have been on for the last 13 years, but I do a lot of charity work and show up.
All right, you've told us about intention. You've told us about the importance of words. You've told us about the importance of faith. Leave us with one more important thing we can do in our life.
Act. Don't say, take action. Everything, life without action is a painting. You just sit there on the wall. Action is the key to be able to execute things that you want to. Don't just say this, do it. Like you said earlier, don't ask, what can I do for you? Do something. So action is so critical in everything in your life. I mean, in my book, I write down about purpose, and purpose is critical too. Mm-hmm. You have to have purpose, because without purpose, life without purpose is like a sailboat without a rudder. You just go where the currents and the wind take you, not where you want to go. So you need to have purpose in your life. But purpose in your life without action is just a painting.
Wow.
So action is critical. And with action, what comes with action is fulfillment, because you accomplish what you're trying to do. So once you get fulfillment, that just fills you up to the point where, what's next? What can I do next? What's the next thing that I can act upon? And that's critical too.
Well, thank you for that, Peter. Thank you for everything you've shared with us today. This has been so great.
Thanks for having me. This has been absolutely wonderful. I enjoyed this.
Oh, yeah.
And I love what you're doing with the Rose.
Thank you.
It's 30 years.
37.
37 years, and that's a commitment. Yeah. And that's action. That's taking action.
Oh, thanks.
And that's people, you're 1% of the population. Okay? Just think about that. When you get tired of doing what you're doing and you're thinking, this is just so difficult, know that your action has made a difference in so many women's lives. And that's very cool for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
You want to borrow these now?
No, I don't. All right. That's it for today. We're going to have Peter back very soon.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk About Your Breasts. This podcast is produced by Speak Podcasting and brought to you by The Rose. Visit therose.org to learn more about our organization. Subscribe to our podcast, share episodes with friends, and join the conversation on social media using hashtag Let's Talk About Your Breasts. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. Consider supporting The Rose. Your gift can make the difference to a person in need. And remember, self-care is not selfish. It's essential.